Good afternoon, everyone. I want to thank you all for tuning in tonight. Tonight we have an awesome jewel before us. We have Miss Bridgitte Green. Miss Bridgitte Green, she's a counselor, she's a therapist. Actually, she's a family therapist and a marriage therapist as well. Miss Green has been trained. She has a lot of knowledge. She has a lot of understanding. But however, we're going to allow her the opportunity to introduce herself. So I present to you Miss Bridgitte Green. Miss Green, thank you so much for allowing us this space tonight. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. So tell us a little bit about yourself.
Thank you for having me. I am a coach and therapist, and I work primarily with couples. I work with couples who are also neurodiverse, meaning there's some ADHD, autism, those types of things within that makes communication difficult. I work with that, with communication. If we are not communicating, we are not connecting. And if we are not connecting, we're not really having a relationship. And that's marriage or any other type of relationship. We need that connection. And so that's one of the main things I work with is communication. We don't do that well. And so I give skills and interventions to help with that. And I love working with couples and families. I work with individuals also, but couples really are what I love. I do therapy in the California area. Coaching I can do anywhere in the United States, well, anywhere.
So you mainly center around couples, but what caused you to want to get into being a therapist? What was it that was I feel like this is something I know I need to do or I have to do?
Well, actually, that's what I wanted to do all along. But instead, I became a probation officer. And what I found is that there's a lot of therapeutic information, therapeutic times that you have when you are a probation officer, but you don't realize it at the time. You're just sort of doing your job. And then I realized I enjoyed talking to them, to the kid. I was always a juvenile probation officer. So I enjoyed talking to the kids and their families much more than any other aspect of that job. And so I went back to school to be a therapist. In the meantime, I had already gotten a master's degree in education. And so I decided I was going to be a teacher. And again, I realized that I just need to be a therapist. And so I just went full steam ahead to finish school and become a therapist. So that was just something that I always wanted to do, and something that I felt I was good at was listening to people objectively, listening to what they wanted, feeling what they could feel, and listening in a way that I could understand what they were trying to say, even if they didn't know what they wanted to say. So that's
Wow.
how it sort of wound up here.
Wow. You mentioned just a moment ago, you brought up the word communication.
Mhm.
And we sometimes tend to want to be heard in general,
Mhm.
but yet when others start talking, we're not receptive, but people tend to want people to hear them
Mhm.
or hear what they're saying. Talk to us about the true importance of communication and what is, well, I'll go this. Can you touch on the importance of communication and what is effective communication?
Effective communication is listening without interrupting and listening for understanding. If you're just
Mhm.
listening to hear the words, if you're just listening so the person can finish what they said so it appears that you were listening, that's not effective communication. You want to listen for understanding, and you also want to be able to state your needs. See, we don't do that in our relationships. We don't say, I need you to move your car and park it on the street every Wednesday. Because when I come out, I'm running late every Wednesday morning, and that causes me frustration. And so could we just work on this? That's not what we do. We say, just move your car. You're getting on my nerves. I don't understand why you can't just do it. But we don't talk about what it really is making us feel. It's making me feel maybe uncared for because I've asked you over and over and you still aren't doing it. In the meantime, that gives my partner or relative the opportunity to say, I didn't know it was that important, or I'm afraid to park on the street because remember the neighbor's car down the street was stolen. That gives them the opportunity to say what it is that's really driving them. And that's what's important, that we state to each other what our needs are and what's driving us. And we don't do it, we make assumptions. We just make assumptions. You didn't move the car because you don't care about me. You didn't move the car because you're selfish, but we don't ask. And that's where relationships really get rough, is when people aren't asking, why did you respond to me like this? That's important that we discover that.
So with effective communication, what are the probabilities, or how important is communication, or if the communication is not there, does that lead to some type of detriment? And if it does, what detriment could it possibly lead to?
Lack of communication really leads to the end of relationships or a huge change in relationships. Because if I can't communicate with you, if I can't be who I am and say what I need to say, then there's an avoidance there. So we may have been married for 20 years, and for the last 15, I really don't say too much to you. And those are the couples that I'm usually dealing with. Couples who'll say, we don't really have any kind of deep conversation. We haven't had sex in 15 years. We don't do anything together. We're two separate people living two separate lives. But the key was that you stopped communicating with each other. And if you can't talk to a person, what else can you do with them? And so that's why it's so important.
Wow. With you being a therapist and you love couples, but as well you are a family therapist also. When you have families where there are olders or elders, the couples, the parents, or the grandparents, or just the elders, period, versus the younger generation, because for some years now, it almost appears to be just as a whole that there is some form of disconnection between younger people in these families and some of the elders in their families. It almost appears to be that people don't know how to communicate without causing some type of friction or some type of unintentional emotional harm, or without another side feeling like they just can't get it right. What would your insight be with that?
That we can't raise children the way we were raised. That's something that's so important that we remember. Now, we were raised, if our parents told us to go to the roof and jump off, we got up, we went to the roof, and we jumped off. That was just it. They told us we don't have any questions. We do what they tell us to do. Our kids now, I have a 16-year-old. She's in school, they're being taught about their feelings, about being validated, about boundaries. They're being taught about those things. Those things are being encouraged. And so then when you come home and you're told, I don't care about your boundaries, I don't need to validate you, you just do what I say, that is met with rebuff. So it's important that we realize we can't raise kids the way we were raised. We can expect respect and we can expect good communication, but we lead the charge on that. And so the first time mine said to me, well, Mom, that's a boundary for me. I mean, I'm a therapist, but in my mind, I went, boundary? What is she? Well, okay, next time she asks me for something, I'm gonna tell her that's a boundary for me. But I didn't say any of that out loud. And later I realized if that's her boundary, that's her boundary. She didn't like the way I responded to her hair sometimes. That's her boundary, that's her boundary. And I said, I won't do that anymore. We have trouble. Listen, some of us feel if our parents did not have to negotiate with us and talk about our feelings, I don't have to do it either. You do. You do. You can still demand that respect. We don't have to lose that, but we have to acknowledge and validate their feelings. Keep the door open so that your child can tell you any and everything. There are things sometimes I don't even want to hear, but I'm listening to it because now I'm open to what's going on in her life. And that's important, not criticizing when they come to tell you this is going on in my friend group or this is going on in my friend group, but actually giving them some wisdom without the criticism. Those are the things that are important.
Wow. You mentioned a lot of great things, but one thing you stated was we can't per se raise our children the way we was raised.
Mhm.
And it amazes me that that keeps coming up about this disconnection.
Mhm.
And it's a major disconnection.
Mhm.
And from my personal experience, personally, with even one of my own, I've learned that once that disconnection comes, it's hard to get it back together. But then when you do get it back, you have to listen. You
Mhm.
have to, and you do have to have those boundaries. But however, enough people are not being encouraged. So, or not people, or it could be a lot of people who are disqualified in the fact that we actually have to be able to listen, to listen to them. And when we talk about feelings, you know, we sometimes don't agree with younger people's feelings, that their opinions and their feelings don't matter. And you're basically saying, hey, basically, you need to listen. Even if you don't want to listen, is there any reason? And I don't know. I'm just asking that has caused it to where it has been encouraged almost, or it's a pattern, or it's a routine, or it's a culture where it's like the culture is being broken, the tradition is broken, that now we need to be able to listen. But however, in hindsight, people weren't taught to speak about things. Those things was kind of hidden. So what kind of harm, or I don't even want to say everything was harmful, but how has not being able in the past been able to speak about your feelings? Do you have any insight on where that possibly may have trickled over to other people in their adulthood lives?
Well, generally, we do what we feel comfortable with. So you'll see somebody who lived in chaos. Say you know somebody and you know their life as a child was chaotic. And now their life as an adult is chaotic. And you wonder to yourself, I don't understand this because you know what that feels like. Why are you doing this? Because often people go back to where they feel comfortable. So if you feel comfortable saying, I don't have to explain anything to you. I don't have to apologize to you. You're a kid. You don't say anything to me. If that's what you grew up in and you didn't possibly recognize fully the damage it did to you or deal with the damage it did to you, then you're bringing that into new relationships. Instead of saying, I tell people all the time, sit and think to yourself, when your parents answered you in certain ways, how did you feel inside? How did that make you feel? Well, when you're saying that to that kid, that teenager, that young adult, they're feeling that also. Why would you want to pass those feelings on to somebody else? A lot of us didn't realize that some of the things our parents did unintentionally were damaging for us. We just accepted it as that's the way it is to be a parent. And so now I'm trying to parent in the same way. But the real deal here is that these kids know about feelings and boundaries because they listen to it at school. And so they're coming in differently. And we have to respect that difference. When my grandmother was alive, something happened and she was wrong. And my daughter was little then, maybe 9. And I said, well, you should go apologize to her. And she said, apologize? I'm not apologizing to a kid. Why would I apologize to her? And I said, because you're wrong. And if you can say to her, I'm sorry, I was wrong, that makes a big impression that you're willing to say, I'm wrong, you were right, and I'm sorry that I said that to you. Now, she knows nothing. She knew nothing about apologizing to kids. She was just like, I'm just not going to do it. I'm just not going to do it. But those are the things that's part of our, unfortunately, tradition.
When we speak about tradition, it appears to be that, and I never have the right phrase for Black people or African American, even though that's what I am, but I've always struggled with the labels. But it appears to be that it's just now within the past few years that more of our specific age of our specific race is seeking counseling. So, what would be your insight on that? Like, is more and more people I think are seeking it, but it's still like it's been said that a lot of Black people just enough of them don't consider counseling.
No, and there are lots of reasons for that. One is you want somebody that looks like you. So how can you really understand my story if you don't really understand my story? And so for a long time, that was it. And there are more African American Black therapists now, not as many as we would hope for, but there are more coming up behind me. And so that was it in the beginning. I want somebody, even when I worked for probation and I would ask the kids, are you talking to the therapist? No. What am I going to say to that lady? Because that would be a person that's white. And so they don't understand anything about me. So that's important. Now, I always tell people, when you call let's say you're going through your insurance company, you have the right to say, I want a Black therapist. People don't realize they can ask for what they want. I want a female, I want a male, I want them to be in this age range, I need this and that. You can ask for exactly what you want. You may not get everything you want because if they're not available, they're not available, but you can ask for it. Thirdly, I guess I should say, we were taught, take your troubles to the Lord and leave them there. Mm-hmm. And when people say that, I say to them, but sometimes we don't even know what our troubles are. We know what we're feeling. We don't know why. We don't know what to say. We don't know what to do. And having that outside contact with somebody allows us to do more of the take my troubles to the Lord and leave it there. So when you don't know what to do, it's important that you have the therapist. Now, there's also something about any type of psychotropic med. So if you're on an antidepressant, oh Lord, why did you let anybody put that on you? They're trying to, just load you up with drugs. And I always say to people, okay, so I can bet if you're over a certain age, you're taking something for high blood pressure, diabetes, you're taking something for something. Why are you taking it? If that's your feeling, that people are just loading you up with drugs, why are you taking that? Because your brain is an organ also, and maybe it doesn't produce all the chemicals that it needs, and this medication gets that right for you. So don't tell me that you can't take that, but you can take other medication. Then you should never even take a Tylenol. So we need to look at that also, and realizing that our children are also being taught it's okay to have a therapist. It's okay to do this. My daughter was going to go to her friends and she said, I'm going to go at 4. And I said, well, don't go until after 6 because remember you have your therapy appointment. She was like, no, I told him I had therapy. I'm just going to go sit in the bathroom while I have therapy. For her, it was no big deal. See, even as a therapist, I thought, well, she doesn't want to tell her friend she has therapy. It was absolutely no big deal for them because several more of them are seeking therapy. Therapy doesn't mean that you're crazy. It doesn't mean that there's something wrong with you. It means that you're trying to keep yourself balanced. That's all it means. So if we would look at it like that, it would be helpful. And we need more therapy in underserved communities. And for me, that's my dream. I always tell people I want to work Monday, Wednesday, Friday for money. And on Tuesday and Thursday, I want to just be able to go in a truck into neighborhoods and just have therapy with people and be free to charge them nothing. Because I think that would be helpful for our communities, is to have this therapy that I don't have to worry about cost. I don't have to worry about anything.
If you could give a message to people over the age of 60
Mhm.
in regards to those 30 and under,
Mhm.
in regards to communication and listening, what would that message be?
That message would be communication looks very different to them than it looks to you. You are over 60, so you want to tell them what you want, when you want it, how you want it, and walk away. They're 30 and under, it's not going to work like that. They're going to have questions, and questions aren't disrespect. Questions are just questions. I want you to turn this pot off at 6 o'clock. Okay, what's in the pot? It doesn't matter what's in the pot, just turn it off. Well, no, it does matter to this particular person. And maybe they're only making conversation with you. Why is it difficult for you to tell them what's in the pot? So just making your statement and walking away, you need to be able to open up, and their thought process is much different than ours. The way they think things out is much different than ours. So it's important that we ask them questions, and we're more revealing about ourselves. We want to be prideful and walk around like I said it, I meant it, don't ask me anything about it. Now I get that there are some non-negotiables in every family, and I have some in mind. Sometimes something comes up, this isn't negotiable. This is how this is happening. And that usually involves safety, or I'm doing something for your benefit. You may not see it. I will explain it to you, but then it's non-negotiable. If you have that occasionally, that's okay. But for the most part, be ready to have a conversation, not just give instruction. And that's what we want to do, is just give instruction. And when we don't get the feedback we want or the face we want, then we're turned off, we're angry. I don't even want to talk to you. So we have to interface with them, not just talk at them.
If you could give something enlightening, some words of encouragement to those 30 and under, what would that be?
I would tell them the world is much harder for you than it was for me. I get that part.
Mm-hmm.
I would tell them that, you see, when I graduated from high school, you were either going to get a job or you were going to school. And if you got a job, it was going to be a job that you would be able to afford to raise a family. You would be able to afford to buy a home. You would be able to afford all those things. If you went to college, you'd be able to do those things also. What was set out before us as the American dream, it was just an expectation. We were going to buy a house, we were going to have cars, we were going to have babies, we were going to do it all. For them, the dream has been snatched. They go to a trade school, or they find a decent job, or they go to college and they get out and they have lots of debt. They can't find a job. And they certainly, I'm in Los Angeles, California, cannot afford to pay $2,500 and up for a one-bedroom apartment. So they went out, and now their dream has been snatched and they're back at home. I would say to them, don't give up. Keep moving ahead. But I get it that you are frustrated, that you are upset, that even when we look at the footprints we're leaving behind, they're being given dates and years. After the year so and so, the world will be unlivable. There will be so much, not enough recycling, and they're hearing all of that. We didn't hear any of that. We were told the world is yours. And we were told that black, white, or indifferent. We were told we had the ability to go out and make a life for ourselves, and we did. They didn't. So that's the first thing they're wrestling with. I went to college. I did everything expected, and I'm back in my childhood bedroom. So how do I deal with that? And then respect my parents, because I'm so angry. Everything that they ask me to do makes me angrier because I'm an adult, and now you're telling me what to do. And so that's what I would say to them. I get it. I get it. So let's look at a way to make this easier for you, more livable for you, instead of just saying what you aren't doing. That's what I would tell them.
When I say I want to thank you for that, because a lot of the times we don't take certain things into consideration. I tell people, I've had to learn a lot as a parent in the not so easy way, but it's heavy work on my patience, my understanding, and my listening skills. And it's helping me. I'm bad about jumping in. So it's helping me to just and listen. There is another concern that's been bothering me, and I don't touch enough about it, but this suicide rate with these teenagers. And this is just me starting, just talking. I made a statement the other day that a lot of bullying doesn't start at school, it starts in families, because I may not just, as an aunt or a grandparent of yours, I might not just walk up and push you in the dirt, but my words can be very abusive and hurtful. That's a form of bullying.
Mhm.
So if you could talk to families as a whole, especially anybody 40 and older, about our words and what we say to, it's not just each other, as well to the younger people that we truly do communicate differently, what would that be?
That would be, if we aren't open and having good communication with the younger people in our families, we don't know what's happening to them. We don't know what's happening with them. So they're feeling very alone. They're feeling that they don't have someone they can turn to and express themselves to. I teach classes at our local county jail, and I work with women. The thing that always makes me the saddest when I get to certain parts in my curriculum and we have to talk about things like this, like not expressing things to parents, is that most of those women in there have been sexually abused, but they never said a word. And if they did say something, it was like, okay, well, we know that's who he is, so tell everybody to stay away from Uncle Joe. No, Uncle Joe needs to go to jail. But as a community, we usually don't do that. We just tell the kids, stay away from Uncle Joe. We tell our 5-year-old, no matter if Uncle Joe tries to talk to you, don't talk to Uncle Joe. That child is 5 years old. That's not their responsibility to stay away from an adult. That adult shouldn't be there. But the only way we get that information is if we are open and honest and we're talking to the younger people in our lives. When they're feeling alone and abandoned and they're bullied at home and they're bullied at school, what do they do with that? Where do they go? So for a lot of them, it's just, I just don't want to be here anymore. They're all wrestling with something. Being a teenager is not easy. They're all wrestling with something. And so they need us, or I always tell people this, build a support system for your child. Build other people, other trusted adults that your child can talk to. And I have done that for my daughter. And the thing I tell them is, unless it involves her being hurt, you don't have to talk to me. I never ask them what the conversations are about. But I know that if there's something she doesn't want to tell me, she has them. And so she'll say, oh, I'm going to lunch with this one. I'm going to lunch with that one. Okay, that's great. Our kids need that support system because they don't want to tell us everything, but they'll have somebody they can talk to. When a kid is saying they're being bullied, don't tell them, well, just fight back, cuss them out, hit them. No, this child is feeling small and unwanted. They don't have that ability. If they had that ability, they would have already tried to cuss them out or hit them or do whatever it is. Don't come home and tell me somebody beat you up. Why? If they beat them up, they beat them up. So now what are you going to do to make this better for your child? Because they're holding, not every parent whose child has taken their lives is a terrible parent. But for whatever reason, this child didn't feel like they could reveal something, they could talk about something. They kept it inside. And a lot of times it's because their parents are wonderful parents. And I don't want to burden you with this. So let your kids know, no, burden me. Burden me with whatever's going on with you. Because for me, it's not a burden to carry.
Mm. Wow. I want to thank you so much, Miss Bridgitte. You have truly, truly helped in more ways that you could possibly even imagine. We need to, you're already doing it, but it needs to be encouraged more for therapy and for listening. And it took that season of COVID for me. So my daughter was a pandemic graduate, and I learned a lot, and I learned that you can't parent the same way. That even I can't, and I think that it is beyond necessary, even more within the Black community. How can people look you up if they, we never know, it's people in California, it's people everywhere. We just never know. So if somebody wanted to reach out to you or see anything that you're doing or anything, what information would you give everybody?
They can go to Neurodiverse Empowerment, which is NeurodiverseMpowerment.com, neurodiverseempowerment.com, or my email, which is bridgettegreentherapy@gmail.com. My name is spelled BRIDGITTE, green like the color, therapy@gmail.com. Either one of those locations.
I want to commend you once again and thank you for your time on this evening. I will ask you to share me the link as well because I can put it out there, the link. But when I tell you it's very much needed, and I'm just a firm believer that ministry comes in different ways. And I can appreciate you for being somebody who is open-minded and not afraid though to come out and say, this is what doesn't need to be done. However, this is what needs to be done because the goal is positive resolutions.
Mhm.
And it is a true need. Um, I share this with people because I can say it because I told his mom. I remember when one of my nephews graduated high school, and you know, my family on my dad's side, they mainly went to one particular university. And my other sister, when his mom got out the vehicle, she kind of nudged him, said, well, why didn't you go to such and such? And he said, it was just too much pressure.
Mhm.
He say, and it's like sometimes people just do things for clout and all this other type of stuff. But what stuck with me from that point a few years ago was the fact that he used the word pressure.
Mhm.
And then fast forward, I had a lady that was talking to me about one of her grandsons, and he just didn't know what he was going to do. And everybody normally went to school in their family, and I'm like, but at least he's being honest because at 17 and 18, he really doesn't know what he want to do.
Mhm.
Like a lot of us, even over a certain age, still don't know at this point. And that's why I say I can thank you for that because we're taught to do things and just to roll with the punches and just to hear somebody actually say, and I'm not being funny, that is a therapist and that's into therapy. And but you've also dealt with things outside of therapy because you used to be a probation officer, and you just have a understanding about things. I feel like all around, but it makes a difference when when you really have confidence that people truly understand that they're not just that this is not you're not up here just per se giving textbook information. You're giving like your professional honest advice in
Mhm.
a way that came along with experience and also true understanding. I want to thank you. I want to thank you. I really want to thank you for that because we're not encouraged enough. People just in general are
Mhm.
struggling mentally right now. It's mental. And
Mhm.
families are being divided because of that one word, two words. No, that one main word, communication.
Mhm.
We
Because
don't
they
want to
don't
listen.
have that ability to communicate with themselves. One last thing I'd like to say is I tell
Please.
people this all the time. Congratulate yourself for your little
Mm,
achievements.
mm,
Congratulate yourself because you will beat yourself up if you make a mistake. So if you
mm,
lose 2 pounds and you've been on a diet,
mm.
congratulate yourself for that. You may have 10 more to go, you may have 80 more to go, but congratulate yourself for that. If you've learned to put a nail in the wall on the stud, congratulate yourself for that. We need to spend more time letting our brain hear us say, I'm a great person. Look what I just did. We need to spend a lot more time giving our brain that information.
Wow. Is there anything else you want to add that I may not have covered or may not have asked? I'm just sitting in a form of oddness right now. I
Well,
truly am.
thank you. It's been a great experience. I thank you for having me here and, love to come back anytime.
And I will be reaching out and I thank you so so much and even though I got you on, but this with us still being in the month of February, I believe Black History is all year round. It's just one of my personal beliefs, but I do want to commend you being in the present moment and in this space right now in this time because truly where you are and what you do is something that is truly, truly, truly necessary and needed. And I appreciate you. I'm sure as many of others that you walked into it that you're doing it because it's necessary and it's needed. But outside of that, I am here telling you it is beyond deeply appreciated.
Thank you so
It's a,
much.
you are appreciated. I will be in touch. Thank you so much for giving us and blessing us with your presence. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me. Thank you.
Talk to you later.
All right. Bye-bye.